You've probably seen the direwolves in the news lately, which, by the way, aren't real direwolves. And you know domestic dogs come from wolves. But that's the last sentence of a 40 million year story that's so much bigger and stranger than you think. Dogs the size of bears that crushed bones across North America, amazing lineages that didn't make it, and living dogs that act like raccoons, just to name a few. So, we traced the nearly 40 living canid species and their extinct ancestors across 4 continents and multiple lineages to find the one unimpressive little survivor every dog alive descends from, and its journey to become the modern dog. This is the entire history of dogs. Hi, I'm Danielle Dufault, and you're watching Animalogic. Canids have taken over the world. There is a dog for almost every ecosystem. But how did they get there? What makes them so successful? Let's take an evolutionary tour from the first known canid 40 million years ago to the nearly 40 living species today. To keep things simple, we're going to refer to all canid species mentioned in this episode as dogs. The story begins in the prairies of North America, the land of dogs, when an unremarkable creature that looked like a mix between a civet, a raccoon, and a fox cantered into existence. Its name was Prohesperocyon, and even though it didn't look like much, its descendants would spread all over the world and conquer almost all of Earth's ecosystems. Every canid you've ever met is a direct descendant of this creature. But let's not sell it short. Prohesperocyon had some unique adaptations that were setting it up for success in a changing world. Its ancestors, like Miasis, were semi-arboreal, omnivorous, ferret-like animals. But Prohesperocyon was almost fully terrestrial. Life on land, and especially in the grasslands, required great hearing to spot predators and prey hidden among the bushes and grasses. So they developed the first feature that would basically define what a dog is. Its auditory bullae, the housing of the inner ear, expanded. This extra room helped to develop better hearing hardware, and every dog that has ever lived has it. The other feature that started setting dogs apart from their weaselly grandpas is that their teeth started to become more specialized for shearing meat than for crushing veggies. And yet, even though it was trending this way, you wouldn't think of Prohesperocyon as a dog. It was the size of a rabbit, and it would take millions of years until its descendants were big enough to eat Scooby snacks and hunt ghosts in the Mystery Machine. But soon after, or possibly even simultaneously, the Hesperocyon appeared and exploded all over North America. And I know, confusingly similar names. It was a bit bigger than Prohesperocyon at about 2 kilograms, about the size of a porcupine, and was an absolute ecological sensation. Hesperocyon fossils are the most abundant small predator fossils of its time. During their time, other predators, like Hyenodon, were disappearing in North America due to climate change, and Hesperocyon filled some of those niches. Studies of their coprolites have shown that they ate a lot of early rodents and rabbits. These proto-doggies still walked on the palms of their hands, but their fingers were getting closer and closer together, and their ankle joints stiffer. This made them less dexterous, but also faster. Basically the same reason that your feet are stiffer than your hands and your toes are more tightly packed than your fingers. This key development eventually led them to become the fast chase hunters we know today, marking the beginning of the dog world as we know it. It was also the start of a lineage called Hesperocyoninae, but more on them later. The early days of dog abundance gave us some strange creatures. Otarocyon, which lived around 30 million years ago, was a tiny dog with gigantic auditory bullae, which made them look like the fennec foxes or bat-eared foxes of today. Their ears were fine-tuned for low-frequency sounds, which helped them find prey in the burrows of the expanding grasslands of their time. A little later, an Hydrocyon would appear, introducing a short snout and bone-cracking molars. It was one of the first hypercarnivorous dogs. At the same time, Archaeocyon was going the opposite direction and becoming more generalist, with a diet similar to a raccoon. It would eat any meat it could get, but could also eat insects and plants if necessary. Meanwhile, Leptocyon, a tiny fox-like dog, was specializing in small prey. They were so small that a member of the genus, Leptocyon delicatus, is the smallest dog we've ever discovered. It was about 400 grams, or about half the size of a chihuahua. But probably the most amazing Hesperocyon was Osbornodon fricki. It was the size of a wolf, but still didn't have modern dog legs, and still walked on the palms of its feet. It was a meat specialist, and it was one of the first species that you could, at a glance, tell that it was a dog. Still, this species would live up to about 18 million years. But all good things come to an end. This lineage was increasingly becoming more and more hypercarnivorous. This is called the Hypercarnivory trap, because even though it makes individuals large and formidable predators, it makes them very vulnerable to changes in the environment and prey availability. On top of that, they had to compete with a new big dog in town, cats. Saber-toothed cats and other big cats outcompeted dogs in many grass ecosystems. We still see that today in Africa, where we have big cats in the savannah, but no large wolves hunting zebras. If access to the large prey they depend on disappears, so do they. And so they did. Thankfully, not all the dogs had gone the same path, and some of the weirdos we mentioned earlier had started their own lineages. The coolest ones of them were Borophaginae, the bone crushers. These were the descendants of the bone-crushing Archaeocyon. There are over 60 known species, and they had different ecological roles that today would be occupied by coyotes, hyenas, and raccoons. The raccoony side of the family had species like Synarctoides, which had teeth adapted for munching on leaves. It was a dog that was trying to go vegan. Phleocyon had basically raccoon-like teeth, and very likely had the same diet, just eating literally whatever. Look at these teeth. Do they look more like the teeth of a dog, raccoon, or a deer to you? The ones that acted like hyenas were the members of Ailurodontina. These were the dogs that committed to hypercarnivory. The name literally means cat tooth because in many ways, they looked like one. Their snouts were short, their necks were thick, and their molars, well, they were meant to shear meat and crack bones. From the basal tomarctus all the way to Ailurодon, its final form, it was a lineage that was converging into hyena, but made for the grasslands of North America. They were even about the same size as a modern spotted hyena. But the real spectacle came from their cousins, the bone eaters. Paratomarctus and Carpocyon, which appeared about 16 million years ago, were about the size of a coyote and had a relatively generalist diet. But by the time Protepocyon appears, about 1 million years later, they were going full carnivore. Its likely descendant, Epicyon, was the largest canid to ever live. It was the size of a bear and had both teeth to hunt and teeth to crush bones. Even if they shared ecosystems with saber-toothed cats, these kitties could never access the nutritious marrow inside the bone. For bear dogs, this was a free meal, but unfortunately, their lineage wouldn't last much longer. The last surviving species of their kind was Borophaginae. It was smaller than an Epicyon, at just about the size of a wolf, but had similarly powerful jaws. They made a living scavenging carrion and opportunistically catching prey, until about 2 million years ago, when the last one of them died. There isn't a single reason, but their hyperspecialization as well as their large bodies likely meant that they too fell into the hypercarnivory trap. Large bodies need a lot of calories, and if there isn't enough meat around and they can't eat anything else, they quickly disappear. So that was it for the bear dogs and their hyena-looking relatives. 40 million years of evolution, all within North America, and they were done. It would have been curtains for dogs in general if a tiny rapscallion hadn't gone the other way and specialized in small prey. That dog was Leptocyon. Remember Leptocyon, the guy half the size of a chihuahua? Yep, their lineage is the last surviving canid group on Earth. All the dogs alive today come from that little stinker. They were, along with the Cormocyon, the first ones to adopt a fully digitigrade posture, meaning that they walked on their tippy toes. This helped elongate their strides and make themselves much faster and efficient. They could move longer distances in search of food, so when one place didn't have good enough cuisine, they could move on to the next and start a new life. And boy, did they do that a lot. One of their descendants, Eucyon, appeared in western North America about 10 million years ago, and soon after, about 2 to 4 million years later, they were the first dogs to leave the continent. They crossed the Bering Strait and took over Eurasia and Africa almost immediately, in evolutionary timescales, of course. By around 5 million years ago, they were confirmed to be in Africa, relatively unchanged, and with the first endemic species, Eucyon koi. Not bad for a little grub eater. Hakuna Matata. So what did they do once they got all that room to roam? Their new expanded world had a huge variety of habitats, so different species adapted differently to the changes. But broadly speaking, there were 3 major ways that these dogs diverged. The first one of them is Vulpini, or fox-like canids. Foxes first appeared, as far as we know, in Africa, where we have the fossil of Vulpes rifautae. And it didn't take long before they took over the world. In Africa alone, there are 5 living true fox species. The fennec fox and the Rupel's fox live in the Sahara, with the fennec being better adapted to sandy areas, and the Rupels being more of a rocky ground specialist. A little south of them, in the Sahel, lives the pale fox. It thrives in the intermediate zone between desert and grassland. This is possibly the least studied living canid on Earth, due to remoteness of their habitat. And in the southern tip of the continent, the Cape fox hunts in the scrublands and savannas. And in the northern tip of Africa, the red fox, one of the most successful canids of all time, likes life in moist areas. They're also incredibly adaptable and thrive all over the world. You can ding them in every European country and most Asian countries except in Southeast Asia. They're also abundant in North America and have become invasive in Australia. In the north, the Arctic fox is one of the most beautiful and well-adapted hunters in the tundra. The Tibetan fox is another cold weather specialist and hunts pikas in the frigid Tibetan plateau. A bit north of them, the Corsic fox thrives in the semi-arid areas around the Central Asian deserts. Similarly, the Blandford's fox makes itself at home in the semi-arid areas of the Arabian Peninsula, Iran, and Afghanistan. And finally, in North America, the kit fox lives in the arid and semi-arid areas of the American Southwest, and the swift fox patrols the grasslands. That's a lot of foxes. There's even another so-called fox in Africa called the bat-eared fox. It's not really a fox, but a fox-like canid. But who cares? It's adorable. Look at those ears! It uses them to hear termites, which are its only source of food and water. Yep, this is the canid version of an anteater. The last two fox-like canids are the tanukis. These adorable Asian furballs are the closest living canids get to the lifestyle of their raccoon-like ancestors. These guys eat everything. It's kind of a problem in areas where they've become invasive. But okay, enough foxy dogs. Let's move on to the next batch of dogs to make it out of North America, the wolf-like dogs. The most significant of them is the genus Canis. And their most successful member is the gray wolf, which is pretty much the same range as the red fox, being successful in North America and Eurasia. This was the species that was domesticated into the dogs that we know and love today. But this is not their story. If you want to learn more about how that happened, stick around until the end. Also in North America, the coyote is a successful generalist that has adapted to life in cities, while the red wolf and the eastern wolf occupy the forests of eastern North America. In the Old World, the golden jackal is found from Southeast Asia to Eastern Europe. The African wolf can catch anything that moves in northern Africa up to the size of a young gazelle. And in the Ethiopian highlands, the Ethiopian wolf specializes in rodents. Many of these wolves can hybridize with one another, which makes things complicated in hybrid zones. But hey, that's another story. The wolf-like dogs are also usually the most social species. In the tropical forests of Asia, dholes work in groups, and sometimes can even outmuscle wolves for prey. The African painted dogs do the same in the African savannas and have a hunting success rate of up to 90%. In Australia, the dingo, technically a subspecies of domestic dog, hunts in packs of up to 10. And the two jackal species in the Lupulella genus, the side-striped and black-backed jackals. The black-backed jackal lives in more open areas of eastern and southern Africa. And the side-striped jackal, which prefers the more wooded areas of Central Africa, is much more widespread, but little is known about it as it's less commonly seen. These two jackals are the most basal of all the wolf-like dogs, which means that the first ones that crossed the Bering Strait very likely looked like them. Unfortunately, because of their diet, which overlaps a lot with ours, they have been victims of persecution, and some species have gone extinct recently. The Sardinian dhole, a dwarf canid, and the gigantic direwolf both went extinct at the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 years ago. The direwolf fell prey to the hypercarnivory trap, getting too big and dietarily inflexible in a time of climate change and increased competition. Its large prey, camelids like llamas, disappeared from the northern hemisphere, and the direwolf went with it. Oh, and by the way, those direwolves you see in the news aren't real direwolves. They're just genetically modified gray wolves bred to look like Game of Thrones wolves, not like actual direwolves. The Sardinian dhole had been trapped on the islands of Sardinia and Corsica, getting smaller and surviving on small rodents. But once humans got there, the island ecosystem got disrupted, and the Sardinian dhole quickly disappeared. And finally, the one continent we haven't talked about yet, South America. The South American dogs are the weirdest in the world, as they've adapted to the dramatically different ecosystems. My favorite one is the bush dog. You can break down today's dogs into 3 categories: the foxy ones, the wolfy ones, and the South American weirdos. Dogs reached South America about 2.7 million years ago when the Isthmus of Panama was formed. It connected North and South America, creating the Great American Interchange. So who are these weirdos? In the rainforests of northern South America lives the bush dog, a cocktail wiener-shaped dog that thrives around water, often even diving in chase of prey. Its closest living relative is, weirdly, the maned wolf. This deer-looking dog lives in the grasslands and pounces on prey like a fox. But it also eats so much fruit that it has a whole plant named after it, the wolf apple. Back to the rainforest, but closer to the eastern slopes of the Andes, lives the short-eared dog, which in my book is the weirdest looking dog in the world. In more open areas like savannas and floodplains, the crab-eating dog earns its name by eating invertebrates by waterways. but it's so adaptable that it's sometimes seen in urban areas. In the southern part of the continent, the Calpeo fox, the Darwin fox, the Pampas fox, the Cetraran fox, the hoary fox, and the South American gray fox rule the Andes and the flatlands of eastern South America, all the way down to Patagonia. And the Falklands wolf was the last canid to go extinct in 1876. It was hunted to extinction because of its fur and to protect sheep. Sad, but a reminder that not all dogs are forever, and they need protection. So that's it, the entire history of dogs. So many species, so many cuties, and so many amazing animals I wish we could have met and pet in person. But thankfully, we still have a lot of species, and many need our help, so let's do all we can to protect them. I'll add some links to some of the canid conservation groups we admire and have worked with in the past. And if you're interested specifically in the history of domestic dogs, click on this video and we'll go through their entire domestication. So what should we talk about next? Please let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every week. Thanks for watching, go pet your puppies, and see ya!